All right, welcome back to another episode of Creedal Catholic. Today, as we head into our Thanksgiving week, and no, Advent is not quite here yet, but it's right around the corner, I'm having on the show one of my favorite human beings of all time, Sally Crippen, my wife. Sally, how are you?
I'm great. I'm glad to be back. And I love talking about liturgical living and Advent in particular.
You are one of the foremost experts I know on the topic of family liturgical living.
The only one you know, if I am an expert.
Well, I've had Kendra Tierney on the show, as you know,
yes.
At your suggestion, in fact. And Kendra is, I think, one of the pioneers of what we can maybe call like sort of Catholic mom liturgical living.
I think she's definitely reinvented it or like renewed it.
Sure.
Or what is the word? Brought it back.
Reinvigorated.
She's brought it back because, as she points out, and most liturgical living experts do, this is a years-long tradition of the church. And so we're really just bringing back these traditions that people used to practice all the time.
It's a centuries-long tradition of the church.
Right.
I mean, I was reading Ken Follett's Pillars of the Earth, which I didn't even finish because there's just kind of so much garbage in that book. I just found it rather awful. But even in there, like, it's in the Middle Ages, and the whole life of the town is set up around, physically and metaphorically, around the church in the center of the town.
Right.
And everyone's lives are dictated by the liturgical seasons of the church.
Right.
And
that's the way I feel whenever I read books set in Ireland.
Right.
Or Kristen Lavren's daughter back in 14th century Norway, where everyone was Catholic and their whole lives, centered around the liturgical year.
And there's something really beautiful about that. And there are some things that we can sort of talk about like the value of liturgical living, but we'll get to all that. Let's just kind of hone in a little bit on the topic for today, which is Advent. And Advent, I think, is a great opportunity, great time of year, in the same way that Lent is, great opportunity to kind of dive into what we call liturgical living and really take on some of the practices that the church recommends or commends to us.
And even better than Lent because it's a mini Lent. It's
right.
Shorter. And we're leading up to Christmas, which is not a better holiday than Easter, but there's just so many traditions surrounding it. Kids are maybe a little bit more excited about it than Easter. So it's kind of an easy one or easier time of year to enter into liturgical living.
Yeah, great point. I mean, I know that we have used our sort of mini Lent, like you said, Advent in the past, as a means to, or as an ability to try out something that we're thinking about taking on for Lent, but really not sure if we have the spiritual stamina to do it. So it's good. You know, if you've maybe thought of like, maybe I'll give up give up X for Lent, try it for Advent and see how it is. You know, I think like, you know, whenever you take on privations, especially if there are big privations, you should always do that in consultation with your pastor or your spiritual director, because sometimes we can deprive ourselves of things too quickly and they just make us crabby and grumpy and draw us further away from God. Sometimes though, especially if we do it intentionally and prayerfully and in consultation with someone who is looking out for our own spiritual health and sanctification, then they can really be really beneficial. So I think that's great. I wanted to read just very briefly. The church talks about Advent in only one paragraph of the Catechism of the Catholic Church, and it says this: when the church celebrates the liturgy of Advent each year, she makes present this ancient expectancy of the Messiah. For by sharing in the long preparation for the Savior's first coming, the faithful renew their ardent desire for his second coming. By celebrating the precursor's birth and martyrdom, the church unites herself to his desire. Quote, he must increase, but I must decrease, end quote. So that is what the Catechism says about the season of Advent. It's obviously not much, but I still think a lot there to unpack. So we can talk about some themes here. One of the ones that comes through most strongly in that little excerpt is that Advent is expectant and preparatory. So we are expecting the second coming of Christ as we build up to this moment in which we recall the first coming of Christ. And as we do that, we're also preparing. And so just like John the Baptist, who goes out into the desert to prepare a way in the wilderness, we too are preparing a way in the wilderness of our hearts or of our souls to bring in Christ. We're also, by the way, I think, preparing a way in the wilderness of the world. And there's this idea of Advent, I think, as sort of a spot of peace in a world that is full of chaos. And perhaps that resonates especially strongly with you this year as it does for me. I mean, like, we've just had so much chaos this year, primarily due to the pandemic. But if you're an American, then you know about all of the racial justice protests that took place across the nation this summer. You know about the rather raucous election season and even still disputes of election results, et cetera. I mean, it's a really chaotic time to be alive. And yes, we can historically contextualize all this stuff and say that people are just soft today because in the Middle Ages, the bubonic plague was much worse and all that. But, I think...
it doesn't change our own experience.
Right. And to sort of our modern psyche, I think this is, a traumatic year, all the same. Right. And so I think that this is perhaps a really good year to step back and think about Advent as a time of peace as well. There's that song, Veni Sancti Spiritus, Come Holy Spirit. And there's a line in there that translates, I think it literally translates as in tears solace, in fletus solatium. Latin scholars probably would say I pronounced that incorrectly. But like the more poetic pronunciation is solace in the midst of woe, which I think is a very beautiful way of thinking about Advent. This is a time that, yes, it's expectant. Yes, it is preparatory. Yes, we might even be abstaining from things that we normally love to enjoy. Maybe candies, maybe meat, maybe some other favorite food of yours, maybe hot showers, right? So
it's all leading up to one of the greatest period of our church.
Right. And there's a point too, in which we place our entire faith in Christ because of that preparation, precisely because of that expectancy. And that's where the solace in the midst of woe comes from. Think about, when at the Annunciation, when Mary says, "Let it be done to me according to thy word," she's not afflicted by chaos. There's no chaos that reigns in her heart. Jesus Christ has not yet been born, but she is at peace. And so there's this, I think, sense in which we can embrace that in Advent as well, as we anticipate the celebration of Jesus' first coming and, in reality, his second coming at some point in the future. What else do you think we should think about in Advent, Sally?
Well, I think that along with the expectant and preparatory aspect is that we have to be patient while we're waiting for Christmas to come.
Yeah.
And that is pretty countercultural because usually Christmas starts on Black Friday, if not before. I know a lot of people this year are kind of starting their Christmas decor even earlier just because COVID has been such a drag. So they want to, jump to something fun and exciting, which I totally understand. But I think Advent can be really fun and exciting in its own way, especially as you prepare yourself and having kids helps. Not that you can't fully enter into Advent without kids, but there's so many ways to make it really fun for kids that help them to get ready for the big octave or 12 days or 6 to 8 weeks of Easter or of Christmas that you're going to celebrate. So I think just putting off as much Christmas celebrating and Christmas preparation, or not preparation, but Christmas celebrating as possible before the 25th.
No, I think it's a good point. I remember growing up, our tradition was to set up the tree the day after Thanksgiving.
Same here.
Yeah, and it was really fun because it was like, to our minds, it was, okay, the Christmas season is now here because Thanksgiving is done. We got the first big holiday out of the way, and now we're just cruise control to the second holiday. And as I grew up, actually, my parents kind of became more liturgically minded as I grew older, and so we kind of shifted away from that model later. But I think you and I do something even more radically different, which is like we try to actually not celebrate Christmas until it's Christmas. I also remember having a coworker one time who said that I might have told the story before. I know you've heard it, Sally, but maybe even to my listeners. But he said that I and my wife and kids and I, we celebrate the 12 days of Christmas, and they get a little gift. Starting on the, whatever it is, the 14th or whatever the 12th day before Christmas,
counting
the day
down
of Christmas
to
is.
Christmas.
Counting down to Christmas. And I was like, oh, the 12 days of Christmas start on Christmas, right? And I was like, oh, really?
Well, it's really hard because usually Christmas music on the radio stops on the 26th.
Right.
And there start to be Christmas sales, and Christmas is just over after the 25th. And I think it makes Advent that much more meaningful when you realize that the church's calendar is set up for Christmas to then last until, you can even drag it out until Candlemas in February, but at least for an octave, if not 12 days, if not the baptism of our Lord. So it's not just all of this penitential giving up and sacrifice and fasting and almsgiving for a month to have one day of feasting. It's actually many days.
That's a good point too, because there's also this, growing up, we did not do this, but we had family friends who took down their Christmas tree either Christmas Day or the day after, because that was the end of the season. And so it's like, well, there's nothing more to celebrate. Now, both the big holidays are over. Now it's just kind of, we stay up late on New Year's Eve, and then we're back into the swing of things with our New Year's resolutions. But, yeah, you're right. I mean, Christmas is a lot longer than that. So I think waiting to do your Christmas tree, waiting to do Christmas movies, waiting to, partake of the sort of Christmas cookies and treats as much as you can. I think those are all really good things. And I like your countercultural point too. I mean, we should be doing these things a little bit differently than the Santa Claus at the mall views Christmas, right? It's not the same to us, and it shouldn't be the same to us.
Yeah, and I think on the penitential aspect that Advent is a mini Lent, not in the sense that it's Lent light, but that it's just shorter.
Right.
So we still incorporate all of fasting, almsgiving, and prayer into our spiritual life in a new way, in a deeper way. And it's fitting that the winter ember days fall during Advent, which are an intensified time of fasting and penance. So I think and then even we have 2 vigils, which are also times of fasting and penance. Whenever there's vigil,
one of them is going to be very surprising to a lot of our listeners, I think.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's get to all that in a sec, but I first want to step back and just talk about liturgical living in general and why that's important. And so we already mentioned the countercultural thing, right? It's a way for us to be in the world, but not of it. It's a way for us to bear public witness to the fact that what we do is different. One thing I remember listening to a Matt Fradd podcast recently, and he was sharing with him that he was interviewing another guy named Jacob Imam, who was sharing with Matt that after he became a Christian from Islam, this is Jacob Imam, some of his friends challenged him, his still Muslim friends challenged him, and basically the challenge was like, it boiled down to, you guys don't take this seriously enough. And I think there's something there in at least a reflection on how lax kind of like modern Western Christianity, and I also mean Catholicism, has become. Like, as an example, it used to be a standard practice that Catholics not eat meat on Fridays. That has since been relaxed in the past several decades by the USCCB, et cetera. Now it's like, now you're certainly allowed to eat meat on Fridays, and it's just encouraged that you take on some other practice. But even that recommendation is not commonly known. So I think most American Catholics don't take on any sort of penance on a Friday. And certainly not casting aspersions at any individual Catholic in his or her situation. But what I'm saying is, I think there's this general tendency that we go to Mass on Sundays and holy days of obligation, but beyond that, the faith doesn't have a whole lot of bearing on how I live my life, on the clothes that I wear, on the food that I eat, on the ways that I spend my money, on the ways that I earn my money. And the opposite should be the case. We should really be informed by the faith on all of these things. And so when we lean into the liturgical year, it's a way for us to show the rest of the world that, yes, we do things differently. The holidays that we celebrate, the ways that we celebrate our holidays, the food that we eat, et cetera, or the food that we don't eat, all this can be a way of showing the faith. And I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, and I think another point besides that is that since we're submitting to the church's wisdom and the wisdom of God in terms of how we structure our lives, we're allowing ourselves to be formed by the wisdom of the church and of God through the church's liturgical year. And so it can Advent, or not just Advent, but liturgical living is a way to allow ourselves to unite our wills with God, with God's will, and to be formed spiritually.
Yeah, that's a good point too. I think of the rosaries, the mysteries of the rosary rather, and how those mysteries allow us to through contemplation, enter into the life of Christ. And that's what the liturgical year does as well. I think people often don't think about it this way, but the liturgical year is nothing more or less than a way for us to align our calendar year with the life of Christ, which is exactly why we're coming up on Christ the King Sunday, the last Sunday in the church year, in which we celebrate Christ as King of the universe. And as we see Christ depicted in Revelation in all kinds of awesome, in the truest sense of the word, ways, he is the King of the universe, and we celebrate that. And then at the very beginning of the year, we are back to him, back to us being, like John the Baptist, a voice crying in the wilderness, as we await the baby Jesus' arrival into the world. And still, everything that we celebrate along the liturgical year is in some form or fashion that we're able to participate in the life of Christ. So I think you're absolutely right, Sally, that it's formative in the same way that the mysteries of the Rosary can be formative. And so when we really double down and we say, I'm going to intentionally adapt my life to this part of the liturgical year that allows me to more fully participate in and enter into the life of Christ, that's really important. And I think that views the third thing, which I would say about this, is just that this can be catechetical as well. So it can teach us for sure. We can learn about this as we enter into those mysteries. But for those with kids, it can be really important or really helpful for us to teach them what it means to be a Christian, to be a Catholic, to help them understand who the triune God is, who Jesus is, who God the Father is, the Holy Spirit, who the saints are, as we have multiple opportunities literally every day of the year to celebrate the life or death or both of a wonderful saint. And so I think it can be catechetical as well. And families that intentionally recognize this as an option and don't pursue it, I think are really passing up on a great opportunity to teach their kids about the faith. There are many more who I think just don't really think about this as a way to catechize, but it's all right there. And it's certainly true that there aren't a ton of resources for you, but there are some, and there are a ton of internet resources. I mean, if you have access to the internet, you have access to resources for living the liturgical life of the church.
And it seems like there's
kids.
Books being written all the time about the liturgical year.
Well, one of our favorites is Catholic All Year by Kendra Tierney, who was on the podcast. Was that before Advent, I think, Kendra Tierney?
It was before Lent.
That's what I meant. Yeah, before Lent. Yeah, thank you. And that's a great, just like, I talked about it then on the podcast, but it's almost like a manual for every season of the church year and many of the days throughout the church year and how you can sort of, participate in those things. So some really good stuff there. Some of the things we'll talk about tonight, specific things to celebrate, haven't come from that book. Others are kind of taken from various sources. But let's transition to that now, Sally. Let's talk about some, and we'll just kind of walk through Advent, not every day, of course, but just some of the highlights. And we'll start with one of my favorite traditions that comes from the English, actually. And it is called Stir Up Sunday. So what is Stir Up Sunday, Sally?
So Stir Up Sunday is the first Sunday of Advent. And it's the Sunday after Christ the King Sunday. And this year it is the 29th of November. So right after Thanksgiving. And the name Stir Up Sunday comes from the collect for, if not that day, then that week, about stir up thy might, we beg thee, O Lord, and come so that we may escape through thy protection and be saved by thy help from the dangers that threaten us because of our sins. And I like to think of it as asking God to kind of to jolt us out of our ordinary time complacency and start moving in our hearts and working in our hearts to get us ready for the coming of his son. And literally, we can stir up our whatever batter you want to make on Stir Up Sunday. Originally, it was like plum pudding that
fruit
you
cake
would,
kind of thing.
Things that you would have to make the batter for early and then let sit and kind of ferment and get yummier over
back
time.
In the days when the English would cook with like brandy, right? And so you'd like stir up the fruit, the flour or whatever, and throw all that brandy in there, and then come Christmas time, it'd be a delicious fruit cake. Well, you started on Stir Up Sunday. When you first, so I learned about Stir Up Sunday from you, Sally. When you first told me about it, I was thinking stir up like as a part of a saddle for your
like a horse. Yeah.
But no, it's actually stir up our hearts.
So our version of that is just to make pancakes, which we do often on Sundays anyways, and have everybody to have the chance to stir the batter, and to say this collect
you
together.
Pray the collect as a family, exactly. And it's nice. I mean, the first Sunday of Advent is almost always, but not always, the first Sunday after Thanksgiving, right? And it's just nice because this is potentially a good opportunity if you have family visiting you for Thanksgiving, maybe not this year because of COVID, but nice opportunity for you to observe Stir Up Sunday with extended family, perhaps.
Yeah, bring them into it.
Yeah, but it's really fun for everyone to get involved and like, okay, now we're kicking off Advent. Now it's time to prepare our hearts and get serious about this. Sally, you also have a chain for Advent. Can you talk to us about that?
So that kind of just helps me keep everything straight, but I like to make a chain sometime in November where each day the kids can take off one of the rings, and I end up saving those pieces of paper for the next year so that I remember what I did. But it just tells us what the saint is for that day and maybe something that we're going to do that day to celebrate the saint, or if there isn't a major saint to celebrate that day, then some other way that we're going to get ready for Advent and and incorporate our fasting, almsgiving, and prayer into our lives.
And you say it's for you, but it's really for the kids, but it's for you to like keep track of all the
yeah,
things.
I can keep track of the things
right?
that I want to do, but then they can also be involved in the process too.
Yeah, and by chain, it's like the paper chain. So you cut the strips of paper, you tape them together, and it's
so I have purple for most of the days, and then white for the solemnities, and
pink.
then one day is pink. Yep, Gaudete Sunday.
Yeah,
and then sometime during Advent, I will make a Christmas chain as well for the 12 days of Christmas.
but the Advent one I think is good because it hammers home to our kids this theme of expectancy. Like we're moving towards something, we're driving towards something. It's not a endless time of waiting. We are taking on sacrifices, etc. But we're also doing some things that can be fun as we prepare to welcome Jesus. And so we'll talk about some more of those things. One of my favorites is St. Nicholas Day, which we observe on December 6th.
Yes. I did want to mention that Stirrup Sunday is also when you start your Advent wreath. And you could make your own wreath. You could make your own beeswax candles, or you could just buy a store-bought wreath or a fake wreath and buy candles. And just make sure you have the right colors. And each Sunday, there are special prayers that you can say. Those are all available online.
Yep.
And then each night of Advent, you'll want to light those and add to it each Sunday. And
I would just say, I strongly encourage parents to have a set aside time, especially on the Sundays of Advent. But ideally every night. I mean, it'd be great if you could do a family dinner and then have a little time of prayer, etc. But I would say especially on the Sundays of Advent, it's important for parents to have a time of recollection, perhaps and probably just after a meal because everyone's at the table, kind of a captive audience if you have young kids especially, and have a moment where you can light the wreath together. You can do the Advent blessing of the wreath, appropriate for that Sunday, etc. Another thing that would be good that we didn't mention is starting on November 30th, you can do the St. Andrew's Novena, which is a tradition. You say it on the 30th all the way through once a day, right? Or is it three? Yeah, once a day, starting on the 30th all the way through Christmas Eve. And it's a beautiful prayer and that again, just sort of helps us drive home the reality of waiting for Jesus. And this is an especially good one, I think, to pray in the evening because the imagery in the prayer is kind of it's about midnight in the cold. And I'll just read the prayer actually because it's beautiful. It says, "Hail and blessed be the hour and moment in which the Son of God was born of the most pure Virgin Mary at midnight in Bethlehem in the piercing cold. In that hour vouchsafe, I beseech thee, O my God, to hear my prayer and grant my desires through the merits of our Savior Jesus Christ and of his blessed mother." So that together as a family, just once a night from the 30th through the 24th.
Is a great way to incorporate some new Advent prayer tradition.
That's great.
Yeah. There's other things that you could add on and other ways that you could intensify your family's prayer life, but that would just be a great starting point. And Kendra actually calls it the Christmas anticipation prayer because novena is kind of a misnomer since it's not 9 days.
Yeah.
And I think that's just a great way to phrase it too, that we're anticipating Christmas by saying this prayer.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it is. So let's go back to St. Nick's Day because we got a little sidetracked. So this is one of my favorites. We obviously celebrate St. Nicholas of Myra. A great saint in the life of the church, heavily celebrated in the Eastern churches especially. And there's the legend of him giving the gold coins to the widow's daughters. Is that right? Do I have that?
To daughters who don't have a dowry. And so they couldn't get married if they didn't have enough money. And so he would leave them sacks of money. Either he would throw them through their window or leave them at the end of their beds or put them in their stockings, or there's, various versions of the legend. And
so in keeping with that legend, one of the traditions is to leave coins in your children's shoes overnight.
Right. So they put their shoes out the night before on the 5th. And then there's different ways you can celebrate. You could just put gold coins in there. You could put an orange in there. That's also a tradition.
Yep.
We like to give them a new book for Advent. And so they get those three things, around their shoes.
And we normally do it. This is fun. We do the chocolate covered or the chocolate coins, foil covered chocolate coins, which is kind of fun. They get more excited about those than they would about, a few quarters.
Real
anyway.
money.
So, but yeah, that's a really fun one. And it's a great opportunity to just do some catechesis on St. Nicholas and who he was. And
there's so many books out there. A great one is by Demi, but there's plenty of books, ways to learn about who the real St. Nicholas is. And if you have confusion about Santa Claus, this is a great opportunity to point out that, Santa Claus comes from an actual person.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a great catechetical opportunity too. We don't do Santa Claus in our family in the sense that we don't have, a Santa Claus come down the chimney and deliver gifts, but we do the Saint Nick delivery overnight, and I think our
and
oldest,
we say that's for the kids who celebrate, the boys and girls who celebrate Advent.
Exactly.
Saint Nick comes for them.
And I think our oldest is kind of skeptical of the reality of Saint Nicholas coming to our house, et cetera. But it's still a magical, fun thing for the younger two, and the oldest goes along with it. So, but that's a lot of fun. Right after that, we have December 7th, which is by the way, did I say that right? Is it the 6th for Saint Nick's Day? That's right. Okay.
Yeah. This year it's the second Sunday of Advent.
Okay, yeah. And so then December 7th, we have the Vigil of the Solemnity of the Immaculate Conception.
Yes.
And then obviously on the 8th, we have the Solemnity itself.
Right. So the Vigil is traditionally a day of fasting and penance. It is also St. Ambrose's Day. And you can get ready for your huge celebration of the Solemnity of the Immaculate Conception.
So let's go back real quick. You said it's a day of fasting and abstinence. Why is that?
Well, traditionally, vigils along with Ember Days and Rogation Days were all penitential days in the church's history. And
it's again because of this anticipatory theme. A vigil before a major feast is an opportunity to anticipate the feast.
Right.
Just like in Advent, we take on penances. You do the same thing on the vigil of a major feast. The reason this is really interesting is because Christmas is a major feast, which means Christmas Eve, by the way, is a vigil, which means, by the way, it's a day of fasting and abstinence. So, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But
yeah, and similarly, Halloween, which is a funny one too.
Good point. Yeah, so no Halloween candy on Halloween. Just kidding.
No, luckily Halloween candy is vegetarian. So
yeah, good point. Okay, so we've got the Solemnity. So what are some ways we can celebrate the Solemnity besides, of course, going to Mass on this Holy Day of Obligation?
Well, it's fun to wear something white or put white ribbons in your hair, to decorate with white balloons, white streamers, to eat white foods, white chicken chili, Mexican wedding cookies, whatever your family likes, whatever would be fun. Mashed potatoes.
Cookies, you can save the wedding cookies for either the next day, St. Juan Diego's memorial, the 9th, or you can just throw them in the freezer and bring them out again on the 12th, which is the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe.
Exactly. Yeah. And they happen to be white and Mexican. Perfect.
Some other things you could do. I mean, you could sing a song. There's some wonderful hymns about the Blessed Virgin Mary. You could do a litany of the Blessed Virgin Mary. We actually love doing litanies in our house. Our 2-year-old loves watching altar boys at church and really, really, really wants to be an altar boy. So for his birthday recently, I made him a little altar boy cross to carry, a processional cross to carry around the house. And he does that, and we follow behind singing a litany. And so we'll do a litany of the Blessed Virgin Mary. Sometimes we'll do a litany of All Saints, etc.
You could do a family rosary. You could enthrone an image of Mary in your home. Just something big that you can do to celebrate Mary. And it's a great opportunity, again, on the catechetical point, to talk about what the Immaculate Conception is, since there's so many misconceptions about them.
Right. So it's just about how Jesus was perfect when he was born, right, Sally? That it's one of my favorite misconceptions. Is like, I mean, it's sad that so many Catholics don't know, but it's also, to me, amusing that people don't understand what the Immaculate Conception is and how it celebrates Mary's Immaculate Conception and not that of Jesus. Okay, so I mentioned St. Juan Diego on the 9th, and then we've got the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe. This is actually a feast.
A feast, yeah.
And so one thing that we do in our family is really celebrate the feasts in Advent. I mean, even those that aren't solemnities, we kind of look at the calendar, and Our Lady of Guadalupe, for example, is one where we're like, okay, we want to actually make this a feast. So in the past, we've gone to Mexican food, and you can have meat in your Mexican food, which is fun. If it's different from what else you're doing in the rest
we kind
of Advent,
lift our Advent penances, whatever they are,
right,
for that day, because it's not just any old saint day. Not that any of them are boring or unimportant, but it's actually to the level of a feast, which is right under a solemnity.
Yeah, I also think on that day it's a great idea to find a Spanish-speaking parish if there's one near you and attend a mass at that parish. I mean, the story of Our Lady of Guadalupe, her apparition, there is such a powerful thing for so many people in the sort of Hispanic part of America, but especially in Mexico. And I think just going to a parish for which it has kind of that extra meaning would be a really cool thing to do for your family. Again, going back to the catechetical point that we've made previously. And there are some really good children's books about Our Lady of Guadalupe as well.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just such a remarkable story. And our kids love it. It's just a captivating story for kids. So highly recommend, finding some books at your library or something that you can dive into with your kids on the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe.
Yeah, we've had a few. One parish that we went to one year did a whole play of Juan Diego and Our Lady of Guadalupe, which was awesome. And then they served Mexican hot chocolate afterwards. And then another parish had a special Spanish mass for Our Lady of Guadalupe.
Right.
And then the children processed up to the statue of Mary with flowers. So
it was cool. It was super cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. Those are obviously non-COVID times, but...
All right, so then the next day, special for our family, maybe not for everyone's, but I think this is still a fun day with some cool traditions. This is St. Lucy's Day, so...
in a way, this is an easy one to celebrate as a family because there are so many traditions.
Yeah.
You can just pick one out of a huge number because St. Lucy was... In Sweden, she's highly, highly celebrated, and so there's a million recipes out there. You could bake anything that is remotely Swedish, and the easiest one, I think, is just to have cinnamon rolls that are pre-made, and then you unroll them and then roll them to look like, you'll have to look it up, it's hard to describe, but it's like an S shape, and then you put in currants or raisins or chocolate chips as eyes, and those are supposed to be symbolizing St. Lucy's eyes, which were taken
Gouged
out,
yeah.
and then God put them back in.
Now, cinnamon rolls aren't Swedish though, right?
No, so actually, if you want to get even more traditional, you would make saffron buns.
Which is a Swedish pastry?
Which is a Swedish pastry, yeah.
And you make them to look like eyes?
Yep.
Okay.
And I'm just not that talented in the baking department.
Remind me, there's something about like the oldest daughter.
Yes. So yeah, in Sweden,
buns or something.
the oldest daughter would get dressed in a white like nightgown and a red sash with
as Lucy, right?
Yeah, with a wreath of candles on her head, and she would bring in the cookies and the buns, in the morning. And that was supposed to symbolize, that would be like St. Lucy, who appeared to people in the catacombs of Rome with a lighted wreath on her head.
Yeah.
A great book about her, actually, that talks about all of the many traditions and legends and stories, real and legendary, is Lucia, Saint of Light by Catherine something. And it just talks about like how this Italian martyr became such a Swedish phenomenon.
Yeah, it's really funny, actually. I find that wonderful though when a culture can sort of latch onto a saint as their own. I mean, another funny example that I've always found humorous since I learned about it is how Saint Joseph is such an honored personage in Italy, and obviously, Joseph, the foster father of Jesus, was not an Italian. Right. They've really just adopted him.
Yeah,
and made
his favorite dessert were not cream puffs.
Believe it or not, yeah, it's somehow the traditional food to eat on St. Joseph's Day. But yeah.
Well, and this year we're excited because we're gonna get together with a couple other Lucys and celebrate St. Lucy's Day.
Yeah, it'll be great. So this year, the next thing on the agenda, I think for us, is Gaudete Sunday. You wear pink. It's a great time. Obviously, your priest at Mass should be wearing pink, or he better be wearing pink. And maybe the rest of the family can wear pink as well. And that's kind of a fun thing. It's a time of joy. It's maybe a time to really double down on Sundays as solemnities and really be happy and joyous. I would say try to set aside time for the whole family to do something as a family, something joyous there. But my favorite thing about Gaudete Sunday is a tradition started by JP2.
Ah, yes. Bambini Sunday is the other name for Gaudete Sunday. And that is when you bring all of your baby Jesuses, which you, by the way, have not put out because baby Jesus doesn't come to the manger until Christmas Eve.
Right.
So if you have your nativity sets out, which we like to bring our play nativity set out on Gaudete Sunday.
Yeah, it's like one of those Fisher-Price Little People nativities, and it's great for kids play, yeah.
Yeah, and we like to have so the tradition is to have all of your baby Jesuses blessed by a priest. And I think we're the only family last year who just brought up a handful of baby Jesuses to our priest and had him bless them. But then you would, take them back and save them for Christmas Eve.
Love it. Yeah. And so, JP2 started that. Benedict XVI and Francis have continued it. So apparently they invite all the young Catholics of Rome to bring their little Jesuses from their nativities. So pretty cool.
I love it.
Okay. So, let's skip Ember Days for now, just for time, and let's talk about Las Posadas. So, what's Las Posadas? Celebrated on the 16th this year.
Yeah. So this is another.
Is that this year, or is always the 16th?
Every year?
16th.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, in Mexican communities, cities, they will process through their town each night starting on the 16th of December as Mary and Joseph on a donkey. And they will sing songs, and there will be like people dressed up as devils who will try to shoo them away and say, "We have no room for you, no room for you." And Mary and Joseph finally find somewhere to be invited, and they have a late dinner and kind of festive time, and they do that each night leading up to Christmas. And Tommy DePaulo has a great book called like The Nights of Las Posadas that describe this and explain it. And actually, Josefina, the American Girl, also talks about it in her Christmas book.
That's a great point, Sally. I think I would highly recommend our listeners who have daughters of the age that they would appreciate American Girl dolls to think about Josefina, because Josefina is a devout Catholic, and there are a lot of things weaved throughout those books.
Yeah,
Epiphany,
Las Posadas.
She's born on St. Joseph's Day, I believe.
Yeah. It's really fun.
St. Nicholas's Day, she gets coins in the shoes, etc.
Right.
So there's some really cool stuff in there. I mean, the writers obviously, as far as I know, don't appear to be, faithful Catholics, but they're
just trying to be true to
they're
the
at least
time
true to the
period.
heritage, and it's really cool. Our daughter's been reading them and just thinking like, oh, it's so cool that Josefina does this and Josefina does that too.
She has a family altar and they do family prayers.
Yeah, so a great way to again, help catechize your daughter. Okay, so one of my favorite things is the O antiphons. If you have been Catholic for a while, you're probably very familiar with the O Come, Emmanuel. I mean, even many secular people, I think, are, because it's a sort of a hauntingly beautiful, key of E minor type of piece in which we
maybe
anticipate.
not all of the verses.
Yeah, sure. And so there are 7 of them, and they're called the O antiphons. It's O Wisdom, O Lord, O Root of Jesse, O Key of David, O Rising Sun, O King of the Nations, and then O Emmanuel, which means God with us.
And they form a, what's the word for a not a matrix, but not a mnemonic, an acrostic. They form an acrostic. If you take the first letter of each of those attributes of God or names of God, and then in Latin, and then you reverse them, it comes up with EROCRAS, arrow cross, I guess. And it means tomorrow I will come.
That's cool.
Yeah.
just like they planned it. Yeah, so these are cool, though. You start them on the 17th, and you do them through the 23rd, and then you're done by Christmas Eve. And again, a way to enter into the mysteries, to anticipate the coming. So that would be another cool thing. Maybe after you finish your St. Andrew's novena or your Christmas anticipation prayer, starting on the 17th, you could do an O antiphon verse per night.
Yeah, sing an O Come, Emmanuel verse, exactly.
Yeah.
And last year I found a coloring book that had a page for each of the O antiphons, which was pretty fun. Just available online.
So I think the last thing we could talk about, right, the 4th Sunday of Advent and then Christmas Eve. So the 4th Sunday of Advent is maybe the week leading up to that, perhaps maybe that week would be a good time to do some of the sort of what we might call conventional Christmas preparation things, maybe set up the family tree. Sally, we like to decorate our tree a little bit differently.
Yeah, so when we get our tree, I put Advent decorations on it. So just purple ribbons or purple balls, any ornaments that we've made to go along with Advent saints, anything related to Advent we put on the tree. And then on Christmas Eve, I'll take all those decorations down and put up our Christmas decorations while Zach prepares our Feast of the Seven Fishes.
This is my favorite thing to talk about. I've been waiting this whole podcast to talk about the Feast of the Seven Fishes. So I said we would talk more about Christmas Eve as a day of abstinence. It is a vigil for a major feast that is Christmas, and so you're not supposed to have, traditionally speaking, I mean, the USCCB has not issued a moratorium on meat on Christmas Eve, just to be clear.
Unless it was a Friday, I guess, then that would be...
No, they still haven't issued a moratorium, right?
True,
so,
no.
So they've not done that. I'm not saying you have to do this, but traditionally, this would be a time, again, where you abstain from meat and anticipate the big feast. And in Italy, the traditional meal for Christmas Eve, and you can read about this if you don't believe me, in Tommy DePaula's Merry Christmas Strega Nona, there is a Feast of the Seven Fishes in which you celebrate, but still abstain with a big feast on Christmas Eve.
And probably usually they would go to midnight mass first and then have the feast after that.
You think so?
I think so.
But if they're having the feast after midnight mass, wouldn't they eat meat?
Oh yeah, that's true. Okay.
I think this is like probably earlier in the day.
Okay.
But anyway, it's all fish, and there's 7 different kinds of fish. And so this has become, over the past 2 or 3 years now, our family tradition on Christmas Eve. So we don't do meat on Christmas Eve the whole day. And then at dinner, we have a wonderful feast, but there's still no meat because it's all different kinds of fish. Now we kind of stretched the definitions of fish. So I think last year there were goldfish involved, I think, because we were a little short on one of the fish. Maybe that was
like one of them.
Maybe it was Swedish fish or something. We definitely cheated a little bit, but it was fun. I mean, there's some, the kids obviously like tuna fish, so we could do some tuna fish like on crackers, salmon, mahi, ahi tuna,
mackerel, like canned mackerel.
Yeah, that's right. I think we might have done sardines one year too. So it's just fun for everyone in the family to taste different kinds of fish, and it's been a really good time and very enjoyable. So I highly recommend that as a fun Christmas tradition. And then there's no question about the Christmas dinner. You can do like a big roast for the Christmas dinner or prime rib or something.
Right.
But you don't have to worry about repeating yourself because one's going to be very different from the other. So that's fun too. Really, really love that tradition. And now we're on Christmas, Sally. This episode is not about Christmas, but maybe just a few quick thoughts here. So what do you want to leave our listeners with thinking about how to celebrate Christmas once Advent is over?
Yeah, one is just don't stop celebrating after the 25th because that's only the first day of the octave, the first day of the 12 days of Christmas. And there are church traditions that take Christmas through the baptism of our Lord and even to Candlemas, which is February 2nd. So we like to...
It's a bit long for me.
Yeah, it's a bit long for Zach. So we usually take down the tree after the baptism of our Lord, but then I like to leave the lights up until Candlemas. Because it's fun to, as much as possible, turn off electric lights on Candlemas and appreciate candlelight or Christmas lights. But you could leave your tree up through Candlemas, especially if you get it really late in December. Then maybe it'll last that long if it's real.
Yeah, those are all really good. I would just maybe add a couple things. I think, kind of tapering or sort of metering out the gift giving over the 12 days is a great idea. And so, because I remember growing up as a kid, so excited for Christmas, went to bed on Christmas Eve, got up on Christmas Day at 4:30 in the morning, whatever, woke up my parents, tore open all the presents. And then by 9 a.m., I'm depressed because all the presents are open and there's no more surprises.
Right. And even if you're celebrating for 12 days, it's kind of hard to keep that going unless you have more things to celebrate with. Yeah. So whether that's a new saint, which there really is a saint for pretty much every day of the 12 days of Christmas, or special foods, treats, desserts. We like to bring out the cookies that we made during Advent that we froze or gave to neighbors, bring those out. And then, like Zach said, having some little gift or present to look forward to each day. And Epiphany happens during the 12 days of Christmas at some point. And that's when we like to say that the wise men bring the stocking stuffers for our kids.
Yeah. So we do stockings on Epiphany, which is fun. And just, again, a way of just kind of spreading out the excitement and the anticipation for the kids. So.
And Kendra Tierney's tradition is to leave some sort of, to leave like hay or straw for the camel. And then
it's the liturgical equivalent of leaving cookies for Santa Claus.
Right. And so then the camel eat that. And then the way they do it is that then the camel leave their camel spit behind.
Ew, gross. I remember that. And I remember thinking, I'm not sure about that.
Which could just be an egg white.
There you go. That's still pretty gross. Okay. Well, I think that is it, Sally. Any resources you'd recommend for people who are wanting to learn more about this or kind of dive in headfirst like you have?
Yeah, well, I mean, we talked about Catholic All Year by Kendra Tierney. Also, Haley Stewart's blog is a great resource.
Which is called Carrots for Michaelmas.
Carrots for Michaelmas, yep. And then just kind of, I would say, Catholic culture and Catholic cuisine. Yeah,
catholicculture.org. And let me look up the Catholic Cuisine website.
Yeah, and Catholic culture does have a lot of recipes on it, but Catholic cuisine is just dedicated to liturgical recipes.
catholiccuisine.blogspot.com. There you go. So, those are some good resources. And I would highly recommend the Catholic All Year book, because I think if you're just looking for like a one-stop shop to kind of expose you to some of the ideas and give you some practical ideas for how to implement, that's a great one. And I had Kendra Tierney on the podcast. If you haven't heard that episode, she was on for last Lent. I might just re-air that episode this coming Lent as well, just to give people some more ideas about what's coming and how to celebrate, etc. So anyway, with that, I think we'll call it there, but I hope you enjoyed this episode on liturgical living and some tips. I'm especially thankful to my favorite person, Sally, for coming on. Sally, thank you for coming on Credo Catholic.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm sure I made this episode last way longer. There's so many more things I could say.
I know. I had to like move us along.
I know.
Yeah, we were just.
There's so many more things you can. That's the great thing about starting liturgical living in Advent is that you could just pick one thing a week. One thing for each week of Advent that you could do, and you would have a million things to choose from. So you don't have to feel like you have to do everything. And then each year you could just build on that. And so each year, more things become embedded in our family tradition. And so we might do something a little bit different or add something.
I'm glad you said that because I think this can be a little intimidating to people who are
It can be overwhelming for sure.
And so I like your recommendation. Like maybe just set a resolution of like, I'll look at this and I'm going to do one thing per week. Maybe get an Advent wreath, and that could be kind of your one commitment for the whole Advent.
Yeah.
Do that on Sundays. And maybe then on top of that, do one thing a week. So maybe the first week you'll be like, kids, put out your shoes and then dump a few quarters in there, right?
Yeah.
Like it can be something small and it doesn't have to be a huge orchestrated event, but just one thing a week I think would be a great way to just sort of dip your toe in the waters and see how it goes. So maybe try that and think about it. And I would just say, above all, don't get caught up in the logistics and the organization of it all. Remember that this is a way that we can enter into the mystery of Jesus Christ, the mysteries of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, ideally we're saying no to more things than we're saying yes to, because we're trying to create space in these weeks leading up to Christmas, and trying to allow God to have room to work in our lives rather than being caught up in the busyness and commercialization of Christmas.
Right.
So if it defeats that purpose, then that's not what the church is asking us to do. Yeah. But really quickly, we didn't talk about the manger for baby Jesus.
Right.
And I just wanted to mention that if you do want to make it more like a mini Lent, you can encourage your kids to sacrifice by, giving up a special food one day or a snack or doing something nice for somebody else. And then they can put a piece of quote unquote straw, which is just really yellow yarn, into a manger of some sort, even a box, and to prepare the manger for baby Jesus.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
So we like to put that on our family altar, and the kids fill it up with the straw with their sacrifices, kind of like sacrifice beads that St. Therese came up with. And then they see the box getting fuller and fuller until Christmas Eve,
so
when baby
nice
Jesus has a nice
for Jesus, yeah.
soft bed.
That's great. I mean, it's a wonderful, vivid way of helping kids see how they can prepare the way for Jesus. So
through their own penances and sacrifices.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think that's it. If you have any questions, dear listeners, please reach out. Zach, Z-A-C, at CredoCatholic.com. I imagine your questions on this topic will be mostly directed at Sally, and that's totally fine. I'd be happy to put you in touch with Sally. So just reach out to me. Ask any questions you want. Nothing is off limits. We'd love to help people start to kind of dive into liturgical living with their families as well, because it's been a great blessing for ours. I'm super glad we do it. I'm very grateful to Sally for really grabbing the bull by the horns a few years ago and committing to this and doing this for our family. So thank you, Sally. And I encourage all of our listeners to really think about it, give it a shot, pray about it, and ask us if you have any questions about how.
And if you have any traditions, I love learning about other people's traditions and tweaking ours with incorporating new ideas.
You're always innovating. I don't think we've had a single feast exactly the same since we've been starting to do this. So yeah. All right, well, that's it for this episode of Credo Catholic. Send me a note, Zach, Z-A-C, at CredoCatholic.com. Have a blessed Advent. I'll be back next week with more content, but hopefully this helps you get the season started as we prepare the way of the Lord. And until next time, God bless you.